G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it.
Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Mike McHenry, founder and director of Seamless SMSF. And Mike's based in the Gold Coast, Australia. So thanks for your time, mate.
No worries, Mick. Good to see you again, buddy.
Yeah, it's been, just chatting off air. It's been a while. And I'm trying to think, mate, we met probably at a conference. It's probably going back 15 years, maybe even longer. I think it might have even been a Rob Nixon conference.
I reckon it was, yeah.
Yeah, and we had a few of those together and a bit of fun and go for many years. And you're kicking goals in your business, and it's fantastic. And now you're telling me you're originally Geelong, based in the Gold Coast the last 4 years. Awesome, mate. So just tell us a bit about your background.
Well, I mean, I'm from a pretty big fam. I got one of 7, and my oldest brother, my brother, my sister, then me. We did accounting, so I didn't know what I wanted to do. Did accounting because they did it. And I thought, there's going to be probably some assignments that I can check in on, and that'll help me. Yeah, and not knowing what I wanted to do, but knew that I think I had to probably have a business at some point, whatever that looked like. And I thought commerce made sense. And then had an accounting practice for a long time. I was in business with my brother Steve, and we had a few partners, and it was a very successful business, and it still is. But I just got to a point, Mick, where I just felt I needed to do something just for myself. I needed a change. I think there's probably a lot of people in business that maybe they shouldn't be, and they need some help. And then it's easy to identify businesses that need help, but not everyone can see they need help. They might think they know it, and they flounder. So I just wanted to change and sort of fell into the super side. I could see perhaps there was a bit of a hole in the market where accounting practitioners probably needed support. It's not a big part of their business, but they just needed some support. So I sort of got my head around that, did the technical training, and then started the business in 2013. So I sold out of my accounting practice in 2011, had a 2-year transition, wonderful people there. So that's what I did. So I started this business, and I had about, 300 funds, probably 10 clients. And it's just grown over the last 10 years. So 2013, 2014 was when it all started, and it's been a fun journey, I mean, it doesn't come without its challenges, and you have these little challenges along the way, but it's been terrific. And I've got a wonderful, wonderful bunch of people who are my teammates. We don't have a hierarchical structure where everyone has a role to play. We're all supportive, and we're pretty clear on the end game, which is to make sure that people are looked after internally, consumers, suppliers, everyone. We just want to make sure we have a great experience with everyone. And at the end of the day, we're proud of what we've done for people and proud of what we've created. And that's really that's the objective, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's a snapshot.
Yeah, sounds like a great culture. So, so the business itself, what does the business actually do?
So what we do is people with superannuation, they can have a self-managed super fund, which means that they can manage their own money. And what comes with that is responsibilities on what they can and can't do. When they see their accountant to have the accounts prepared and the tax return lodged, before it can be lodged with the tax office, it has to be independently audited. So that's what we do. So we independently audit sets of financials for super funds. If there's problems with the funds, we report them to the tax office. Hopefully can give solutions where, hey, this has got to be fixed. This is where the problem is. This needs to be fixed. So that's what we do. So until that happens, the accounting firms can't lodge the tax return. So it's a bit of a niche in the accounting space, and we enjoy it. Like it's a bit of fun.
No, great. And being involved at Collins SBA, and we use your services. You do a great job. So it's good.
Thanks,
for everybody.
Mate. Yeah. No, thanks, mate.
So do you have some key numbers you can share just to show the growth of the business, either, sales from when you started or full-time equivalents or anything that sort of indicates your growth over the years?
Yeah. Well, when I started, I just went out on my own, and I had one staff member. So he was actually started in the accounting practice. He came out of high school and did like a cadetship. So he started with me, and he's now 31. He's still with me. And we started with probably 10 firms. We probably audited 300 funds. And now today we probably have locally about 50 people. We audit about 30,000 funds now across about 360 firms. So I mean, when you look at the data out of the ABS website and you extract data on different category of business sizes, the bulk of businesses turn over less than 2 million. I think it's about 92, 93%. And then you've got your 8% that are over 2 mil, probably about 3.5% over 5 mil, and about 1.5% over 10 million turnover. And as you know, there's some critical numbers that you need to hit to be able to leverage people, because often the hard part of business is that growth phase where you just need to get some critical mass. You need economies of scale to a degree so that you don't have a dependency risk on people if they were to leave. And often businesses that have like 10 people or less, if someone leaves, it leaves a gouging hole. One person leaves, it's 10% of your workforce. When you've got 100 people, it's 1% of your workforce. So I think you can also put more people on, have them trained in anticipation if someone were to leave or pursue a different career, but also to allow you time to train, build that culture so that as you grow, people can grow into that. I think often we can do it in reverse a little bit. We're trying to put food on the table, and we want to make sure we're maximizing that bottom line, but we're really vulnerable. If someone were to leave, we become really vulnerable. And I think because I sold out of my accounting practice, I had a little bit of working cap, which meant that I could invest in the people. I could always have overcapacity. I could invest in system and process. So yeah, that's sort of that. Hopefully that answers your question around numbers and.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I think you mentioned 60. That full-time equivalent, or what sort of?
Full-time equivalent is probably about 40
Yep.
people full-time equivalent.
Yep.
It's interesting because our business does small priced items. So we do high volume, low price. I think like accounting firms and other businesses where they might have a consulting arm and it's, they're doing a $10,000 price piece to somebody or a $5,000 price piece. There's time that goes into it. So it's really hard to get casuals to do that, because if they're only there for 2.5 days, it doubles the time frame. There's lag in delivery. Whereas when you're doing stuff that's around the $400 or $500 mark, it's a day. So if you have people in for the day, it might be 2.5 days or 3 days a week. That works. Like for example, in accounting, if they're doing activity statements, those sorts of things, you can have those people do that, but they're just a bit periodic.
And so you started the business in 2013. How old were you when you started?
Well, I've always, I'm 55 now, and I started,
44.
Yeah, that's right, 44, 45, and then the accounting practice, I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and then prior to that, I had a career business, and I was, how old was I then? I think I was 20, I think I was 25 when I started that. And then prior to that, I just worked for an accounting firm just to learn those skills straight out of uni. So I sort of went from accounting. I thought, I don't think this is for me. I didn't feel that it didn't have the excitement that I needed. It didn't, it was probably more churn, just get tax returns done, like get financials done. And it was a bit of groundhog, as opposed to more, how can we actually minimize tax? How can we consult? How can we do things that are value add? And perhaps at that first experience, I didn't get access to that, which was probably fair enough. I was only a young puppy coming out of uni. So there's a bit of a journey to learn your basic core skills. But I just felt I don't have the patience to learn. I don't want to do this. So after 4 years, I pulled the pin, had a career business, and geez, wasn't that a baptism of fire? I thought this would be easy. Drive around a van, I could get out, talk to people. But the big lesson I got from that, Mick, was it's about relationships. You go into a dispatch of a big place, they look at me and go, mate, we deal with Fred. Fred, we have a beer with him at the pub. He's been doing it for 10 years. He's the career. We just, we use our freight delivery with them. We're not using you. Who are you? So it really showed me, no matter how you present yourself, no matter how shiny the van is, no matter how sharp your price might be, it's all relationships. You've got to have good relationships with people, and people buy from people they like. And that was perhaps the biggest takeaway for me in that moment. I thought, this 2.5 years, this is tough. Yeah. This is hard. You're earning $5,000 for the year to really try to get any momentum. Wasn't even covering the fuel.
Yeah. I think it's probably maybe underappreciated the aspect of relationships, particularly essentially when you're in the business of people, which your business is essentially the business of people, isn't it? So
it is, yeah.
It's so important to look after them, be proactive like you have done as far as hires, and be ahead of the game. So
yeah. You know what?
good stuff.
On that, mate, I reckon, and it could be accounting, it could be consulting, it could be manufacturing. No matter how you chop and dice, let's say it's even an online business, no matter how you chop and dice it, you have to deal with people. The end consumer, whether you talk to them or not, you have to be able to deal with them. You have to understand them, and you have to understand what their needs are and what their problems are so you can solve them. Even if you're selling something online, because if you don't know what their needs are or what problem you're trying to solve, you don't know how to market to them. You don't know how to actually tell them how you can solve that problem. So then, and then it affects your supply chain as well, because the people you want to buy from, they've got to be the right people. So you got to deal with them, be able to negotiate reasonable and fair price so everyone gets a drink at the trough. So yeah, it's people's the key. It's really so important. It's and it's a nice thing, because at the end of the day, life's about being with good people and being in good communities, and developing strong, good communities with good leaders, and you sort of can do that from the grassroots in business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when was the moment you felt like you'd succeeded?
Like, success is an interesting word, isn't it? I've always sort of referred to success as it's really a journey. I think for me, well, I suppose knowing initially when you start out, you just want to be financially independent. You want to make sure that you can get to a point where you're not singing for your supper, or you're concerned that if something were to go in a direction that you didn't expect, something comes from left field, that you're actually going to be okay. The family's going to be okay. So I think when that happened, and I think, probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I felt comfortable that, we're in a place where, Mick, I mean, you know me, mate, like I could live in a tent. It wouldn't worry me. As long as I've got good people around me and I'm happy, that's the name of the game. So I don't need much. I don't want for much. I'm really proud of our business, but I still take out the same drawing every month that I took out when I started. You keep it pretty simple. You remain pretty humble. And for me, success. So really, it's always been, once I got through that barrier of, okay, I'm okay, it was really about trying to get a feeling, because really at the end of the day, that's what I'm chasing. And I think that's what most of us are chasing. We're not chasing new houses. We're not chasing extra televisions. We're really chasing a feeling. And for me, I just want to be excited about something. If I do something and after a while it's not exciting, I don't want to do it anymore. So when we create something or put a system in place that actually works, that excites me. When we do a build and we can see it roll out and it works, that excites me. When the business grows and the staff are happy and they're engaged and they're developing, that excites me. When you've got people that have been with you for 8-10 years and you see they're getting partners and they're getting married and having kids, that excites me, and you feel like you've been part of that process. So I think that's where I'm at now, mate. I just want to be excited.
Yeah, that's good. I like your attitude. So what does success look like to you?
Success for me is I just want to leave the place better than I found it. I just want to leave a legacy where, for me, as the business has grown, I want to make sure that the people that have come under my care, that I feel that I've done the right thing by their families, that they now have someone within their family that's become a leader, because we're not going to be here forever. And for me, I just want to leave a legacy of just really good people and good leaders with good values, where you stand in your truth and you make sure you don't deviate from your values, but you can do it in a nice way and just have a great experience. And when people join my organization, I spend hours with them as a part of their induction. So they do their normal induction, but I do a cultural induction, because I want to get to know them, but I also need to let them know that no matter what they choose to do, I'm there to support them, because they just got to have a great life. I don't want them to get stuck in an industry where after 5-10 years, they've got a debt, they've got family, and they actually can't get out, and it actually compromises their happiness. So for me, it's really about making sure people are pursuing a path that's going to bring them joy. And it could be doing volunteer work. It could be farming. It could be anything, whatever that is, I'm there to support them and get them there. And I think when your business gets bigger, it's a bit of a luxury. You can do that because if you're not dependent on anybody. But early days, I always said that to them. I said, just make sure you give me that 2-3 years if you can, right? But, when you know what you want to do, tell me. because not everyone wants to be doing auditing. Some people want to go into planning, financial advice. Some people want to get into broking. Some people want to just pursue management in a business somewhere. I had one guy who was with me for years, and he wanted to go back to the family farm near the South Australian border. And I wished, it was awesome. We keep in touch, and he's happy. He's married. He's got kids, and he loves the small community he lives in. He loves it, mate. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, great story. I think it's a great approach.
Yeah.
So what's number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Well, I think for any business, first you've got to choose if you want to have a decent sized business, because it's a choice. So it's really about, do I want a big business or do I want a small business? Because ultimately it's just a game. You're playing in a game. Do you want to play? And if you do want to play, what size business do you want to have? What size game do you want to play? And you need to do it by design, I believe. And for me, initially, Mick, to be honest, I just wanted to know I could put food on the table and I was happy and I wasn't going to be stressed and worried. And then I had balance. But then I could see real momentum. There was an ability to have real momentum. So for my business, it was about structuring. How do I scale? If I did 5,000 to 10,000 funds, what does that look like? What systems do I need in place to be able to manage that? What personnel? So you sort of dream ahead a little bit, and then you break it into, some rocks, 5 rocks of key areas, and you break those rocks into pieces. Okay, 5 smaller rocks for the first piece, 5 small, and try to get that detail in there to know what size business you want to grow. And then for me, from a marketing point of view, you really can't market a product if the product's not good enough. And if you can't manage the growth of the product, you're wasting your time. So for me, initially, those first 3-4 years, I just pumped money into infrastructure, into training and into infrastructure to know that when we're ready to scale, we can actually manage it. We don't let people down. So we needed high quality workflow tools. We needed integrated work papers. We needed integrated training. We needed everything, right? So it was about building it, because the money will come if your product's a really good product and there's a need for it and you can actually solve some problems. There'll be a demand for it. It's just a case of, can you deliver it at scale? So how do you build that? So that was the first part. So once I built that, and I was driving around banging on doors, I presented at that conference in Bali, and I was pretty nervous. I hadn't done it, and I think I had a really small time frame, a little window there to talk. And so from that, people came up and said hi and tell us about what you do and in more detail. And so I picked a few clients up, and I felt, I thought if I can get to 600-700 funds, did my math, I'm putting food on the table, I'm okay. And then I thought, okay, what's the next step? Grew it. And then personally, I had to go out, got some maps, worked out where accounting firms were, did a route of where hotels were, and off I went. And so you're doing that, and then you're checking on audits, you're building infrastructure all at the same time. And it gets to a point where, okay, now I can't wear all the hats. Now I need someone to take that hat, which was the sales hat. So I could focus on the infrastructure, the training and the audits. And so I put on a salesperson, and that was a real key moment, because I knew the infrastructure was built. I knew I could scale. And then from there, that person just needed to know, well, why are people buying from you? Like, why wouldn't they choose another auditor? What's the difference? And we had like different marketing material to help accounting firms. If they need it, they could access it. So once they used our service, there were other things that they could just access online that would help support their business, because if they have growth, we grow with them. And that was the concept. It was really about sharing with them that we're not there to be crack a whip. We're there to solve problems, and we're there to help them grow. If there's some tools we can share with them that will help their business run smoother, then that's what we'll do. That was a point of difference, and that attracted business. But the real key from a scaling point of view was understanding, what do people need? What do the firms really need, and actually offer that. So I think what I see with a lot of businesses is that they bang on about their experience, their own experience. They bang on about how long they've been in business, and they bang on about the product. Well, people will probably already know about a product, but they just want to know how you solve their problem. So there's not enough talk on websites and marketing to say, hey, do you have this problem? We've helped people with that problem. What about this problem? So what you want the consumer to listen and say to themselves, we've got that problem. Hey, we've got that problem. I reckon we should talk to them. Because if you're talking about, hey, we sell chairs, whoop-de-doo. If we sell, if you sell tables, whatever it is, but you need to explain why someone might need your chair. So you're trying to say, do you get a sore back when you sit on your chair at home or whatever it might be? But you're trying to make them think. You're trying to attract their consumers' attention that they have a need and they have a problem, and you actually have the solution. You're not talking about, oh, we've built chairs for 20 years and we use a special fabric so it doesn't irritate your skin and da-da-da. It's not about that. Because the consumers go, oh, this is all good, but you're selling to me. It's not about that. It's about, hey, you might have these problems and we've got experience in solving it.
Mm.
And that's any business, you know?
Yeah, that's right. That's a very good point. So how did you fund your business? You said you sort of had some capital from selling out your previous business. So how have you funded this business?
Yeah, sold my share of the accounting practice, had some shekels in the cookie jar. That's code for had some money. And then for me, I don't need a lot of money. You know, I don't live an extravagant life. You know, I want to catch up with my mates. I like to go to a barbie, might have a couple of beers just to be social. But ultimately, I don't need a lot. So I just make sure that what capital I have, I've always got surplus capital in the business. And I think what I used to see when I had my accounting practice, and often what I see when I talk to firms and some of the challenges that those firms have, is a lot of people that start a business, they want people in their community to think they're successful. They want people to believe they're in the gin palace, that they're in the penthouse, but they're not actually prepared to do what's required to actually buy the penthouse. You know, they want people to think that they're successful, business is awesome. And so if they're affluent with what they do, then it's telling a potential consumer, or generally just fueling their ego, that, hey, look at me, I'm successful. Whereas that's never been me. I couldn't care less. You know, I used to drive crappy 20-year-old cars. I didn't really care. For me, it was, I just want to live within my means and make sure I had the working capital to actually build something that I knew could take off like a rocket ship. You know, I'll buy the penthouse when I'm ready to buy it, and when I've afforded it, and when I've actually can feel proud that I earned the shekels to actually buy it. But I'm not going to go around beating my chest saying, oh, you know, looking like I actually have the penthouse. You know, people want to feel I have the penthouse without actually working hard for it.
And then it comes unstuck pretty quick. So it's sort of, leave your ego at the door is the message, isn't it?
It is. And that's what we say. And that's on our cultural agreement. You know, make sure you leave your ego at the door, because if we truly want to be an outstanding business, well, you've got to point the fingers inward. You've got to look at where we can be better. We've got to pick apart our systems and our process. We've got to pick apart our marketing strategy. We've got to make sure the fingers are pointing inward. The moment we start pointing outward like it's not our fault, we're really disempowering ourselves. It's really empowering to be critical. And in our office, we want people to say, no, I think that was my fault. No, I think it was my fault. No, I should have. No, but it was in my team. Yeah, but I mean, if we had these conversations, and maybe we need. So what happens is it stimulates conversation. It stimulates thought and ideas on how do we solve that problem from ever happening again. And it only happens when people are prepared to point the fingers inward.
Exactly. So if you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Yeah, I would. I think, look, ours is a regulated industry. So the reality is the consumer has to buy the product. I think it's always, so when you look at the profile, say a financial planner, or a profile of an accountant, the profile of a financial planner is often very different on a website, because they're trying to sell a need, because people don't have to buy their product. But everyone, like 99% of people, do have to get access to an accountant to do lodgements, particularly if they're in business. So it's a case of, okay, there's a market for it. Regulation says they have to buy, but do they want to buy from me? You know, so accountants talk about, hey, you know, I'm the smartest in the room. I've got all these acronyms after my name, which the consumer already will make the assumption that they're an expert. With planners have to highlight what a problem is and to try to create the need to be able to sell their product. And a lot of industries that do that and have success, it's pretty profound. It's pretty amazing what they've done. So I think for me, I probably would have. And I think to stick in a business that's your wheelhouse as an accountant, to stay in that, and I understand it. So if I had gone into another business, bought a business outside that industry, I'd have to learn about that industry. Particularly if it's in manufacturing or something, and I'm not hands-on. Well, I'm sort of guided by people I employ, and I wouldn't know if it's high quality or not because I don't know how to make it. Whereas in accounting, I know exactly how it needs to be.
Yeah, yeah. What about what's been your most stressful point in your small business growth journey so far?
People don't buy into your culture, and we've gotten so good at what we do now in terms of who we put, when we put people on, and who we actually find. And we had a great period of just finding terrific people, right? And then there was a period where, in terms of some casuals that we put on, it's about people. And when you have a challenge with people, and I'm a people person, like my disc profile is I'm very high D, but I'm very high I. Like I love people, but I can lose patience a little bit. So I think the biggest mistake we've made, and when I reflect, it's sometimes where I felt, hang on, we've had a growth spurt, we've got to get people on, and we've employed people based on their skill before their will, before their passion and desire and their ability to fit in and get along and communicate and follow process and fit into a culture. When we've deviated from that and got people in based on their skill, seriously, it's turned custard.
Mm.
So that's the hardest part, I think. And I think small business, you're really exposed to that because you just need people. Hey, I don't know where all the people are gone, but in every industry, there seems to be a shortage of people, no matter what industry it is. So people feel like they're on the back foot and they just have to find someone. And then they're being dictated to a little bit on terms of, well, I want to work from home. I want 10% more. I want to deliver 10% less. So I think there's some of the challenges. And what I've learned is I cut hard, I cut fast, and I cut deep. When it's not right, I don't dick about. Like I give them one warning, we have a conversation, and there's a process that we follow to make sure that people are clear. But if they culturally don't fit in, then they get a second chance. But after that, we free up their future. And we try to support them in that, them. Look, this is not for you. This is not the environment for you. So we need to support you on the exit.
Yeah, I like that. Certainly our philosophy is, hire slow, fire fast. And I think, your hiring process is somewhat slow. I mean, you obviously got a process and you're hiring ahead of the curve. So that's all part of, I guess, managing that. So, yeah, well done.
Yeah.
So what area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
I just reckon it's culture, Mick. I think if you don't have the right culture, it becomes a turnstile. And I think what happens is when the stakes of the business are around money, it becomes very transactional. So you as the employer is very transactional with your staff member. Hey, what are you delivering? Your multiples should have been this, so therefore only paying you that. But there's a lot of soft skills and there's a lot of goodwill that people deliver and offer that is pretty hard to measure. So for me, the biggest shift was like the whole focus has always been about culture. I just won't deviate from it. It's the bedrock. It underpins everything. It underpins your cash flow. It underpins your execution on developing process, and it underpins innovation. If you don't have good culture and people keep leaving, all you do is, seriously, you never put down the Hessian bag and you never stop swinging it to put out spot fires. So you're better to scale a business back, get it manageable, put people on. And I think people can't often do that because one, they're too scared, not brave enough to cull some clients. No, that's the first part. The second part is they don't have the cash flow. They don't have enough working capital to actually sustain an excess capacity of people to train to have the right culture to then rescale. So you got to have enough cookies in the cookie jar so that when the day of not making cookies comes, you've actually got enough to feed off. Yeah. And that's the key, So for me, that was probably the most important thing. It's all culture. Everything's culture.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think around the financial aspects and having the confidence, so understanding your sort of financial model and your numbers, and that's we've got our business transformation program, and the first part to that program is preparing a 10-year financial model for our clients, which is very powerful as far as understanding the financial model, building the confidence around some of the aspects you just touched on. And also it's very helpful when it comes to funding, but bank investors or even grants. So that's some very good points you raised there.
Yeah.
So what have you enjoyed the least about managing the growth of the business?
I probably, as it's gotten bigger, I have less contact with clients. I mean, we don't see each other enough. When it was small and when I had 10 clients, you could really invest time with them and they become, you understand what their needs are. You understand the challenges they have. I learn from them. So the challenges they're having, I think every business has pretty much the same challenges and it revolves around people. Yeah. And I think that's the part where as it's gotten bigger, that's great. I've got more people that now they have designated roles and people report in, but I've sort of become a bit removed from what I really love, and that's being with people. I think, the approach we're going to take to deal with that is to have just some events around different areas so I can catch up with people, because I want to be able to see them at least once a year. But, now I've got a sales team with BDMs and they're the ones that are having the fun going seeing people. And I don't get to do that. And that's the part I miss out. So yeah. I think for me, that's the part really I want to change and just get that balance,
Yeah. No. And what do you love most about growing the business?
Oh, I just love watching. I get excited about the development of my teammates, and watching them. When they started, they didn't have a clue. Some of them straight out of uni didn't probably know what a bank statement was. I mean, some of them didn't even have their own bank accounts. And to see them evolve and become articulate and confident, and that's the part I really love. It's just terrific. Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's not, for me, it's not about the size of a business or anything like that. It's sort of just, it's evolved that way and we know we can keep scaling it, but to see people develop and actually get their lives in a direction they're enjoying, and, that's the best, mate. When you have kids and you watch them all you want, you got your fingers crossed that they make good choices and they come out the other side and life's good for them. They have a happy life. That's really ultimately what we want. And I feel the same way for my team. Anyone we put on, and they're often quite young when they start, I make a commitment that with their families that I've got to do everything I can to make them a great leader, to make them a good community member, and to empower them so that they can actually pursue whatever it is they want to pursue and have success enjoying doing it. Because I think if we have strong, happy men, in our communities, well, then we have women that have a happy, strong man can support them, and the happy, strong woman can support the man, and we have good families and we have a good community. And I think that's really the key. I reckon something's gone askew a little bit in the world, and I just reckon we just need to come back to some bloody basic values of taking care of each other and showing a bit of compassion, a bit of love, and a bit of care. It's pretty simple. I had a mate, he said, and he loves to cook. When he cooks, he actually sits and he wants to watch you take the first bite. Even when he makes you a coffee, he makes it and he's really particular and he wants to see you take that first sip. I go, mate, that's beautiful. And he starts smiling. He goes, yeah, how good's that? And he said to me one day, you know why it tastes so good? And I go, I give up. Why? And he said, because I give a shit, Nick. That's what he said to me. Because I give a shit. So if I'm going to feed someone, if I'm going to be with them, I'm going to leave an impression of increase. So when I leave, they're going to feel better for having me in their space. So when I cook for them, I'm just going to slap something together to put it in their stomach. I'm going to actually put some care into it so they go, this is a real joy, no matter what it is. And that's how he lives his life. And it's amazing. And it's just a really great lesson that if people just give a shit, and I think if we stop worrying about all the different sectors of our community and whether there's minority groups and all that, if we all just care about everyone, no matter what your preference is or whatever, just care and be respectful of a different opinion and have a respectful conversation, well, the world's a good place, Yeah,
and the rest will follow, right?
The rest takes care of itself. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. What's the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
I think you've got to have system and process, and you've got to be consistent. You've got to be consistent. If you give a shit about people, if you really care and you've got system and process, you've got to be consistent. So if you're saying you're going to have meetings, when you say you need to be on time, if you say that you're going to do something, you've got to do it. I mean, and this all boils back to basic values and principles where if they're outlined, you have to outline them to start with. You have to have a very clear mission on where you're heading and very clear values, because people's behaviors, the challenge we have when you employ people is it becomes my opinion as to whether their behavior is acceptable. And they might say, no, I don't think that was bad. So it becomes an argy-bargy because it's subjective. Whereas when you list values and be really clear on it, like be brave, show integrity, be respectful, be considered, all these things, right? Be united. So when someone's behavior breaches one of those values, you have a reference point. And I think most businesses don't have it. They just don't have it. So here we have a small business. They're dependent on someone. That someone's really good at their job, but they're a total pain in the ring gear. But you don't have a reference point to aim at to say, hey, when you spoke that way, do you believe that was respectful? How do you reckon that person felt? Oh, it wasn't. That's how we always talk. We always use that name when well, maybe not, So you have to have a reference point, and you've got to be consistent. And I think one thing's to have it, and the other thing is to make people accountable, to reward good behavior and to challenge counterproductive behavior. You have to do that. It's like parenting a child. The child, if they know that they can eat ice cream, hey, you shouldn't eat ice cream. It's the wrong time of day. I keep telling you not to do that. And that's as far as it goes. They just know that I'll eat ice cream at the wrong time. You'll go blah, 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 and I just keep eating the ice cream. There's no consequence. There's no reference point. So they don't learn. Nothing changes, right? So I think it's about being consistent. The other thing I'd say is, mate, I think when things get tough, people quit. Yeah, I don't know if we're breeding a society of quitters, but, mate, you roll your sleeves up, you take a mouthful of cement once a day and harden up. Things aren't perfect. Things don't go well all the time. You will have challenges. So if you can't deal with it, get out of the business. Like, step aside and let someone else run it who can handle those things and has the skin for it. But just show some grit and don't quit. And people give up. And if you want to have a bit of success, if you want to enjoy business and you want to foster a good culture, you can't quit. You just got to keep at it. You'll find the right people will come. And when they're there, they'll stay. You keep some cancers in there. You don't treat the cancer grows, and then good people leave and you're left with grubs.
Yep.
You're left with a real problem,
Exactly.
Want specific advice to help you get your business through its #1 growth challenge? Book a free 20-minute growth chat with me, Troy, the founder of Grow a Small Business. I'll recommend some resources which will help you grow your business with ease so you can live the lifestyle you've signed up for. Go to growasmallbusiness.com and click on Growth Chat.
So what about balance between your work and life? How have you handled that over the journey?
It's been a bit up and down, to be honest with you. It's, when you go through a growth phase or there's a development phase, you get drawn into things. And so the balance isn't there. And then there's periods where you have less time in the business and, you have balance with family and your health. I think one thing I've always focused on is there's probably 3 key things: your health, your community, family, and work, business. And if one of those things is out, the other 2 suffer. If you're stressed at work and overbalanced, the stress filters on and the energy filters onto your family, and your health suffers. Stress catches us when we get older, Mick. Your body can handle the stress in your 20s and your 30s, but the damage is getting done, and it all pops up when you're in our 60s. This is what happens. So trying to maintain the balance is always a focus, and we make sure people don't do the extra hours. We make sure we have good balance. We're always over-resourced. But, sometimes it just, sometimes something in the family dictates you need to put more energy into that because it's actually required, And like I said, there's periods we all go through. A lot of people do, and I'm no different. And so there's times I've had to really devote energy to that family side, be it good or bad. And it detracts from the business, but smaller businesses, they will struggle with that. Mine now is bigger and it can sustain it. We've got people in lanes and everything's covered. So it's balance is key.
It is. It's just trying to keep focused. And as you say, you can get distracted because of events or things from time to time. That's just life, right? But as you say, it's those somewhat habits. So what about professional development? Have you invested much in that over the years?
I probably don't seek out the professional development. I mean, we have professional development within our space because you've got to keep up your CPD hours. You've got to keep technically sound with what you deliver. That's just a requirement. But in terms of professional development, I mean, I read books and I listen to podcasts. But primarily, I just talk to people. I want to hear what they're doing because actually everyone's got something you can learn from. So I constantly ask really direct questions. You know, I try to get to the core of things. Once I really feel there's a trust being built between whoever I'm talking to, then I can delve into, you know, get a little bit deeper in terms of, you know, business or whatever it may be. And if I have an issue in my business or something that I need to think through, I'll just have a conversation. I mean, there's really good material out there that people can use, but I think one of the key changes, an epiphany moment for me, was when I knew I needed a salesperson. I just didn't know who I needed. I didn't know what to get. I'd never had a sales team. I had no idea. I'm out doing sales. I didn't particularly enjoy it because I didn't like the rejection, you know. And I think you've got to be wired. What I learned was that they've got to be a professional and salesperson who is wired that way. And so from that conference, I actually got in touch with Jack Daly, who had an amazing business in the US and grew it in a really short period of time to 700 people and, you know, massive turnover, and sold it for millions, but in the finance broking space. And he spoke at one of these Bali conferences. And so I went and spoke to him and said, this is what I need. He put me in touch with a bloke, and this bloke he put me in touch with, David, he went to a Jack Daly conference, spoke to Jack, and he wanted to scale his business, implement it. Now he does some coaching on just specifically on sales. So he guided me through it, and it was probably, I don't know what it cost me. It was about, I think it was 5,000 US a month for about 2 hours. So, you know, he wasn't singing for his supper, but it was really invaluable because there was something I had no idea about. I didn't know how to do it. I was honest about it. If I don't know something, I'll ask. My ego's at the door. I don't care. If there's something I don't know, I just say so. And that was awesome. And then I knew what I needed to get. I knew how to measure it. I knew how to structure a pay structure. And then when I went through a couple of people before I found the right person, and it's been a game changer because that person's an expert at trying to solve people's problems. If we can't, well, they don't buy our product. It's okay. We don't ever sell anything that someone doesn't need or want. Like, it's just, you just don't do it, you know? And so that's been a game changer, mate.
Yeah, no, good. Certainly I've had the fortune of meeting Jack a few times over the journey, and did a podcast with him last year. So for those that want to learn a bit more about Jack, just have a look into our podcast and you'll see that there. So it was a good chat.
Oh, it would have been. He's amazing. How passionate's that bloke?
Yeah, I'll send that to you.
Yeah.
So essentially, in that context, that was sort of a bit of a coach in the sales context. So have you had any other mentors or coaches along the way?
Not really. No, I haven't had any mentors. I mean, I got a mate, and his family grew a massive business that they sold to a US group that's listed. I mean, I think it'd be $1 billion turnover. And I was fortunate enough to go to uni with him. And so there's been a couple of times where I just wanted to know, I'm at a point where, do I go that way or do I go that way? You know, do I turn right or do I turn left? They're still forward, but it's a fork. So which way do I head? And I just, you know, got some input from him. I've had a couple of other mates that went to uni. They've had real success in their businesses. They've exited. They've done really, really well. And so, you know, I might reach out to them every now and then, and they're not really in the same space, but it's just really a way to just someone to soundboard off. But as a rule, I think I just discuss things with our team, and it always comes back to, what does our consumer want? What do they need? Like, if there's something we can deliver that helps solve a problem, that should be our focus. We just need to focus on that. Then we see whether or not, one, it can be monetized, and two, is it something that's scalable? Because if it's not scalable, then there's no point in doing it, because you have a real dependency risk on whoever the deliverable person is. So I sort of trying to stay, and to be honest, to innovate, one, it's hard to innovate our industry because you've got to remain independent, and two, my business is going well enough. I mean, how complicated do I want to make my world? You know, I don't sort of need to. I don't want it to be complicated. Mick, everyone's going to drop dead with no money, and every funeral I've ever been to, I've never seen an armor guard vehicle follow the hearse. I've never seen it. I've read a lot of tombstones, and it never says, you know, Mick Denehey, he was worth a fortune, da-da-da. Nothing reads that way. It always says, born, died, was a loving someone. You know, so
it's all about, as you said earlier, the legacy is important.
That's it, mate. Yeah, that's right.
So what about, have you had a board of directors or advisors?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't done that. I considered it, and I piloted it with those two people that I went to uni with, good mates. I was best man at one of the weddings, and Dave, I lost contact with him, and both Dave actually, because he was in a monster of a business, and we reconnected probably, I reckon, 10 years ago, and he's just a ripper. So they were open to doing that, but no, I hadn't. But I think, if I do step back, that's what we'll do. I'll probably form a board. I'll probably put a salesperson on it, one of my staff on it, maybe a legal rep on it, and I'll chair it and just see how it goes if that's the direction I choose to take. So I think you'd need to do that. If you phase out, you need to probably have something like that.
Yeah. I think it's sort of circumstantial.
Yes.
So, mate, our final 5 questions. So, what do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
People.
Yeah.
People.
It tends to be the common denominator. Certainly, I always say people's where the challenge is at, but it's certainly where the value is at as well, right? So it's a bit of a paradox.
Yeah, I reckon people too. Like, people think, in business, a lot of people think that when you employ somebody, they're actually delivering an outcome. And it's really the person's not delivering the outcome. The process delivers the outcome. The person drives the process.
Yeah.
So person follows process, process delivers outcome. And we sort of miss that a little bit.
Yeah.
And people drive culture. So it's the people, and you have to have the right people. They have to be, if you're into sport, hey, get people in your business that like sport. If you love dancing, maybe, and hate sport, maybe you find people and that's an interest, because then you have there's commonality, and you have something to talk about, and you get to know them. And when you get to know them, you get to trust one another. Only when you have trust do people share and get intimate about what they do or don't understand within their roles. And that's what scales their learning. But if people don't know each other because they have nothing in common, they don't talk, well, then they don't trust each other, and no one asks any questions. Their learning stifles. So yeah, I think that's really, really important. So I love my sport. So I employ people. Everyone loves their sport. They're yapping away on the weekend. Who got best on ground? What happened in the AFL, the NRL? They love it. It's awesome.
Yeah, love it. What's your favourite business book which has helped you the most?
I reckon there's a cracker, and it's called The E-Myth.
Yes.
Michael Gerber. It's a beauty. It's a simple read. I reckon everyone should read that. It really just highlights system and process, and actually getting information about a consumer, so they feel like they're part of the family. It's an easy read. I reckon that should be taught at schools.
Yeah, we totally agree. I think it's one of the sort of foundational books that everybody should read if they're going into business, as you say. So
yeah,
certainly, totally agree. What about any great podcasts or online learning tools you use?
Look, I don't actually follow anyone specifically with podcasts. It's funny, you talk to people and they say, "Oh, I listen to these crime podcasts," or that sort of stuff. I say, I want to listen to happy stuff. I want to listen about crime, and but I'll listen to podcasts if someone, hey, listen to this one, and they send me the link, and then I just listen to it. So I don't actually seek out. I try to seek out the sales podcasts. There's a guy called Simon Sinek, and he does terrific. There's great YouTube clips on him. He's really intelligent, and he really talks about people and some of the challenges that we're having with technology. And technology has its advantages, but geez, it has some disadvantages. They create distractions. The young generation and kids coming through, that's a tough one for them. So in our office, I don't know if you do this, Mick, but everyone's phones get turned off and they go in a box. Non-negotiable. By 8:30, your phone has to be off. And so we went from a box to a shelf. And if the person's not working, there's a red tag in there, so we know they're not in. But if they are in, the red tag's not in their shelf, their phone's in it. So there's either got to be a phone or a red tag on that shelf when they're working. Lunchtime, get your phone, knock yourself out. But during the day, if we're going to be outstanding and be attentive to the consumer's needs, I don't want your phone beeping. I don't want you getting distracted. I don't want excuses. If there's an emergency, your family need to know the office number, and they can ring the office number like we used to do in the olden days, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think,
look, it's a great concept. Like, I've heard that being done at schools, but you're the first business I've heard that have implemented. But it makes sense, because let's face it, I get distracted as well. Like, if you got your phone next to you, it just happens, right? So
and you know what else, Mick? When you go into a meeting and people sitting there got their phones, and then you say, look, make sure your phones are on silent. But so people, what they do is they have their phone and they put it face down. They stick it on the table. Like, okay, no, you got my attention. But what they're really saying, Mick, is they're saying, you have my attention right up until that vibrates on the thing, but then I'll check it. So that's going to be my priority. But right now it's not talking to me. And that's garbage. That's got to stop. I believe in business. We've got to say, listen, I'm 100% committed to what you have to say because I really give a shit about you and I give a shit about where this is going and how we're going to make a contribution to innovate the business that's going to support our consumer. And that is not a priority, this thing, right? So, and I think it helps structure your day. It encourages better time management. You get better deliverables and better outcome, and everyone's engaged. Yeah, everyone's. If you want to talk about business and talk with your colleagues and get to know them, and I think that's what's important.
Yeah, love it. So, one tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business? Maybe it's mate, that's not a tool, but maybe that's a really good initiative.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, when I started this business, I asked myself a couple of questions, and I said, "What do I want people to say about this business I'm going to build when I'm not in the room? What do I want them to say? You know, how are they going to talk about it? And then how do I want them to talk about me and my team when we're not in the room? You know, what do I want them to say? And I want them to say that we're outstanding, not that we're really good or very good, because there's lots of businesses like that. But I wanted to stand out. I want to be outstanding, and they know that we're there to support them. And I really sincerely believe that all of our clients, they really believe that, and the feedback we get on how our team talk to them respectfully. So my whole focus is on how people speak, make sure they show care and empathy, because business is hard, and they're talking to other business owners who might be having a bad day. You know, there might be people in your organization and their husband or their wife's dealing with cancer. They've got a kid that's dealing with an illness or anxiety or depression. People have got stuff going on. And I think if we have a focus of empathy for people and be a little bit more, a bit more about the person as opposed to how many hours they're churning out and billing, I think, you really develop a great relationship with people, and that's the key, mate. So that's the one tool. It's about culture. You've got to just give a shit about people, mate.
Yeah. And finally, if you could jump in the DeLorean and go back to 2013, what would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
Don't panic. It's going to be okay. I think back then I just needed to make sure I could make money to look after my family. And I think people are going to business. That's a big concern, right? So then the focus is about money and how you're trying to cut costs here. And am I going to get that client? And if the client doesn't come on, then you freak out, because your business is vulnerable, right? There's a bit at stake. And I think, what would I say back then? What I've really learned now, it's just a game. You're going to be okay. Yeah. It's okay. And just forgive yourself when you make some mistakes. It's all right, because you're going to make them.
Exactly.
So long as you've got good intent. Part of the journey, mate. Part of the journey. Enjoy it.
Yeah. Thanks for the chat, mate. It's been a great chat, hearing about your journey and certainly the way you go